Testing, testing. Testing, testing. Okay, so let's see. Is this better now? Okay, excellent. So, once more, there's some problems with the OBS. I apologize, the sound check. Okay, so again, thanks for joining in. This is an impromptu stream that I decided to do, largely on the topic of propertarianism and the person of Kurt Doolittle. So let's see. Is this better now? I'm having some feedback here. So, once more, there's some problems with... Ah, there we go. So that was the reason I apparently had some feedback. God, it's off to a rough start. This is not my usual setup. I'm traveling, so please, people, be patient with me as I get the audio things ironed out. So, in the meantime, I will now begin improper. So, I kind of had a few interactions with Kurt Doolittle in the past, and I know that a lot of people recommended that I do an interview with him for my podcast, which is now on hiatus for the Via Obscura website. And in the interim, I kind of looked into Kurt Doolittle's ideas a little bit. They're called Propertarianism, and of course, I came to them through the YouTuber John Mark, who has this. I don't know, he has a channel that had sort of a meteoric rise somewhere around 4 months ago, where he went really from having nothing to having 30,000 subscribers in really, really short order. And, you know, people apparently had a lot of people were really positive on this guy, Kurt Doolittle. Only later did I realize that this guy has been around forever. And what was interesting, I think, about Kurt Doolittle is people... He had a very reasonable way of talking when he was on interviews, but the content of his ideas when it was in a written format was, if I could put it loosely, insane. And what was really interesting is that John Mark, his YouTube channel, he said sort of audibly, he said in audio and video format, the kind of things that Kurt Doolittle would say in his writing. And because of this, we kind of got a raw view of what propertarianism actually was. And initially, I was really interested in this idea. I'm interested in all new right-wing ideas. But propertarianism, what was so funny is that this person, Kurt Doolittle, had no shortage of well, basically compliments to give to himself. But once you looked into it, you discovered there was really nothing he had done in terms of actually documenting his own ideas. And so, for instance, I couldn't find a book on propertarianism. And that's usually when someone has an idea, they write a book on it, and if they can't get it published, they self-publish. And so immediately he says, like, "Oh, I've solved all of these problems with right-wing governments." And of course, John Mark, he's very much the salesman, and he just leans into this. He leans into this and goes on about how the propertarianism is the answer to what was John Mark say, parasite-free government. And then, but there's no book on this topic. There's no documentation. And furthermore, if you look at the social media of John Mark and Kurt Doolittle, they constantly take up the refrain, "Prepare for civil war. Prepare for civil war. Civil war is coming, guys." Not only that, not only is civil war going to come, we're going to win it. And after we win it, we have all of the solutions. It's a foregone conclusion that Red America is going to win the Civil War. This is insane. I could go into it for a variety of reasons. But in the meantime, this is frankly very dangerous from an activist perspective. Because what Kurt Doolittle and John Mark were playing with was nothing less than talking about how people would hypothetically be heroes for engaging in terrorist acts against the federal government. And in the meantime, I'm like, okay, well, initially I'm very interested in propertarianism. I can't find a single piece of documentation for it that isn't Kurt Doolittle's blogging project. And then furthermore, I'm getting into this and I'm realizing that these characters are skating really close to advocating for violence, which is always a huge red flag for me. And it was really in light of hearing these things about civil war that I kind of abandoned the idea of inviting them on via Obscura, which is usually a podcast format for people who are developing friendly relations with, where we're sort of, I want to say that we're endorsing them, but this person, if they're on the Via Obscura podcast, I'm not trying to throw a lot of curveballs. I'm trying to be cordial. I'm trying to make it more about the interviewee. If I have a person come onto that podcast, start talking about Civil War, it destroys the whole format. That's not what the purpose of a right-wing ideas community is. Okay, so all this is boring background. So eventually I feel like, okay, I basically have to make a response to this ideology. And I made a short video, which went into propertarianism a little bit, or at least what I could discern from John Mark, because Doodle has done very little documentation. And it went over largely what I consider to be restorationist movements, and propertarianism bills itself as a restorationist movement for the West, and how those have succeeded and how they have failed in the past. And I particularly emphasize examples like the Ghost Dance and the Boxer Rebellion, where people have essentially attempted to restore the civilization using really, really ineffective means. And I pointed to the fact that if our civilization is in such a state where it can't even control its own narrative about itself, it can't even control its own media, it can't even really point to what it is its own culture, and you're expecting to fight a civil war against the most powerful institutions in the world. This is like the Boxers saying that they're going to overthrow the imperial powers and push them out of China because secret kung fu powers make them immune to bullets. And it's not like I want to dismiss all propertarian ideas, but there were huge propertarian ideas with implementation. And I guess I'll get into that a little bit, but just to let people have some time to come into the chat, get situated. I'm going to read super chats and make sure the audio is working. I know we had a little bit of a hiccup at the beginning, as usual. I'm rushing to do this sometimes, so usually because I'm running late and I have to set up everything from scratch. So we've got 2 super chats. So just FYI for people who are watching now, the format of this discussion is going to be, I'm going to give sort of a brief slideshow across what we were talking about in the original video. I'm going to talk about the tweet conversation I had with Kurt Doolittle and some of the subsequent social media posts, and then we're going to listen to 5 minutes from a podcast Kurt Doolittle did with someone I know in YouTube community called Ray Murasami, who's a leftist, and I would say she'd be properly characterized as a left-wing Asian nationalist or left-wing Asian separatist, which I have no problem with. But I think the conversation, or at least the 5 minutes that I highlighted, they elucidate a lot about the conversations and the approach that Kurt's taking to this. So in the meantime, I'm going to answer super chats. If people are wondering why I'm a little bit slower than usual, it's travel time. I've been basically traveling nonstop over the last 24 hours, and it's kind of catching up with me. But I wanted to do this stream right now because I think it's just time to do it. So, Pragmatic Culture for $5, thank you for your contribution, says, avoid collapse cultists if you want to get real political action done. Same reason people avoid Adam Waffen. Well, yeah, that's pretty much it. The people, and this is something that I mentioned in the video that I did, the actual edited video, and not these live streams that, and eventually I've said to myself, when I get to 20,000 subscribers, I'm probably going to split the live stream content out from the channel, because I really suck at live streams. I know that I need to do them, and they're super easy to do, and hopefully people appreciate them. But the live stream content is of a different nature and of a different quality. I feel somewhat proud, at least a little bit, of the edited videos. These live stream ones, really, I do them because there's something I immediately need to respond to, and I feel like I need to fire back on an idea. So I probably will have to break it out. But Pragmatic Culture is correct. You don't want any ideology that can only talk about what the world's going to look like after it wins a civil war. That's like the easiest, stupidest political get out of jail free card. We don't need to deal with reality because civil war. Marxists do this with revolution too. We'll have a revolution. Well, how are you going to implement this? We'll have a revolution. Well, is that going to change human nature? Is it going to change economics? Is it going to change the fundamental laws of political reality? Of language? In the case of Kurt Too Little? Well, probably not. So Pseudo-Analyst for $10, thank you very much for your contribution. He says, I was just watching Ray's stream with Kurt. They talked about your video, and they completely missed your points on ghost dancing in Israel. Any chance you can have Pragmatic Culture and Ray on this stream? Well, I think I can launch a Google chat. My idea was that if people wanted to come on, if Ray wants to come on and defend Propertarianism, we can go through my questions with Ray. I don't really want to have a lot of people on this stream who are, for lack of a better word, people who agree with, or my friends or people who agree with me, for lack of a better word, allies, because then this will become a huge echo chamber. And I want this to be something where I ask the question and try to get a charitable interpretation on what Propertarianism is and who Kurt Doolittle is, because I think even that's really interesting. But I can't do that if everyone's kind of interrupting each other, trying to score points on the party that's not here to defend itself. I'd prefer it to be me and another person who's defending the Propertarian side, or failing that, just me going through as charitably as I can the Propertarian arguments. And I do intend to call a spade a spade. I think Propertarianism, from what it's demonstrated in the last 24 hours to me, is completely bankrupt. Now, if someone wants to correct me on this, please tell me. I have a Skype thing here waiting to go. You can get in contact with me. We can, you'll be on the stream, or we can meet on Discord. That's also a possibility, and that will be a way to actually get an alternative opinion in this stream. But if failing that, the best way to reply to this, because Kurt's not going to talk to me, is to go through this and actually see what the heck is going on. Okay, so I'm going to wait for 5 more minutes and just sort of ask general questions and let the stream mature, so to speak. Oh, I have another super chat, so I guess I'll answer that in the meantime. Okay, yeah, if Pragmatic Culture wants to come on and we can discuss this stuff with Ray some other time, that might be the best way to do this. In the meantime, I think I'm going to lay out what I consider sort of the gamut for Propertarians. I think the thing with Propertarians is that, you know, if it was just Kurt Doolittle, I probably wouldn't give the ideology very much credence. But what you have is you have a bunch of people who seem to be really taken in by this idea. And to me, that's not concerning, but and I'll talk later, I think, why that is. Why Kurt Doolittle was able to get so many people who were more or less talented at YouTubing or at creating sales pitches to sign on to this ideology with what I think is really nothing to show for his efforts. So, Carlo Danger for $10, thank you for your contribution. I'm the guy that asked if you want free music of mine to use as bumpers on streams. Oh, I'm Costa Mesa Kid on Twitter. My YouTube page has a lot of my songs. Either way, love your content. Well, thank you so much, Carlo. I will definitely take a look at that. I do need some intro music. I need to look basically at a checklist for OBS. The problem is that since a lot of times when I'm traveling, I'm setting this stuff up from scratch, I forget that a window is open. I forget that one of the microphones is muted. So we tend to have a very chaotic start on these streams where it's just me and a microphone and not a guest, or it's not done through Google Hangouts. Link for $5. Do you think any legalistic constitutional rule of law form of organized society is viable? Well, yes, but I want to talk about that a little bit later when we get into propertarianism writ large. In the meantime, I think I'm going to pull up my presentation. So I guess my design, and tell me if people can see this. This should be it. My design is to go through a little bit of a presentation and see if we can't. Maybe I can make this full screen. Give me a second, guys. Okay. Yeah. So my goal essentially is to go through a little bit of a presentation I have, and I'm not going to say charitably, because I don't really have anything to say charitable about Curt Doolittle at this very moment, but I'm going to try to be as fair as I can with my analysis and criticism of this ideology. I don't really want to deal with propertarianism in the future. I kind of feel like, from what I've seen and what I'll share with you on this stream, should be enough to discredit anyone in Curt Doolittle's mind who's serious about right-wing thought. And I think basically, in my mind, short of Curt reaching out to me after this stream, I'm really done with propertarianism. And I think everybody of a reasonable disposition on the right should be done with propertarianism. I know John Mark is a talented YouTuber. Dude, find yourself a better ideology to promote. You're a great salesman, but you got to have a product to sell. And as we'll get into this, I don't think that Curt Doolittle has a property to sell. So can everyone see this? I'm going to wait for the chat to catch up. The presentation on the little laptop thingy. If not, people, just tell me. We'll work it out. Again, I am literally working on my laptop here as opposed to my usual setup, so it's a little bit of a change. Okay, so I'm going to start with my video. So I did a video on the ghost dance. This was an analysis of essentially failed attempts at restoration. Now, Ray Murasamy and Curt Doolittle, who did a podcast after this one, as was alluded to in the super chat, totally misunderstood my purpose of this. Now, of course, it's a really good jab to say, so-and-so is a ghost dance. Because ghost dances were this thing that Native Americans did when they were losing power. It was obviously futile. It didn't restore their civilization. And what they should have been doing all the while is learning the white man's laws and lobbying the federal government to respect previous Indian treaties. That's what they needed to do, period. That's what was needed. Absolutely. And this ghost dance was simply a way to retard that necessary adaptation. Now, if you just say, oh, neoconservatism is the white man's ghost dance, libertarianism is the white man's ghost dance, Christianity is the white man's ghost dance, I mean, it's a fun insult. And I know that by having ghost dance and propertarianism in the title of this video, I was inviting the criticism that this was a hit job or a mere insult. But I think if you worked through the video and tried to pay attention to what I was saying, you would see that I was trying to make an actual point of what are the properties of the ghost dance and how does propertarianism fall into the same traps. There's nothing necessarily about propertarianism that is necessarily like a ghost dance. That's not the theory of propertarianism isn't necessarily like a ghost dance. It's how propertarianisms talk about their ideology. Fighting a war against the federal government. That is the ghost dance nature of John Mark and Curt Doolittle. That's their presentation. It's the framing that is like the ghost dance. So moving on from here, the whole point of this video was this slide, the properties of a ghost dance and how to avoid them. And of course, this text is very small, so I'm going to go through it here via voice. So from my understanding, the properties of a ghost dance, you try to resurrect elements of the past that are comfortable but not workable. And that's the thing. It can't just be any element from the past. All movements have things from the past. Like, we don't know the future. We don't, right? So the only thing you can do is look to the past and see what works. The difficulty with a ghost dance is it goes back and goes they don't ask, okay, what works for our situation? They say, oh, what's comfortable for our civilization? What did we do when we were great? Oh, well, we had it. We did medicine dances when we were great, right? Oh, that will work again. Or, what did we do when America was great? Oh, we talked a lot about Enlightenment property notions. Like Thomas Jefferson was the height of our civilization, right? Therefore, if we put everything in the language of property, we'll be great, right? But maybe it will work, but the question is not if that's what we did when we were in our golden age or when the civilization was at a height. The question is that the kind of thing that's going to work in the present day or overcome the central problems? Again, attempts to relive the glory days does not take into account how the situation has changed. It's more or less the same thing as the first point. Fundamentally, intellectually comfortable. So it's a reason not to change. And this really gets into the framing that people like John Mark bring. And again, John Mark's a very talented YouTuber. I don't want to knock him for that. But the framing of, we're going to win the Civil War, guys. It's over. Game over, Blue America. We have all the guns. Prepare for a civil war. Okay, so what does preparing for a civil war mean? Do we form militias? Do we have to join a counter-government institution? What do we have to do? Oh, well, you just have to stock up on food supplies and own a gun. Well, that's really comfortable for Red America because most people who live in rural areas already have food stocks and they already own guns. So it's just more of a reason to do what you're already doing. And you're not asking yourself, okay, why does Blue America have more power than Red America? That's the question Red America needs to be asking itself. And then, of course, it seeks validation against the offending group rather than learning from them. And that's another thing, too, right? If you're losing, you need to learn from your opponent. You don't need to tell yourself a story about how what they're doing is terrible. Guys, so I see some super chats, but I'm going to sort of go through this, hopefully, we'll get to the super chats later, if that's all right with people. It'll have to be, because I think things will kind of go a little bit silly if we have to kind of back up from this again. So, okay. So, people who want to see the Step Up the Ghost dance and my criticisms of propertarianism and how exactly I compared it, they can go there. But this comes down to sort of a more fundamental problem with propertarianism. That's this. I've got some really simple questions to ask propertarians. I think they're very simple questions. Now, how do propertarians answer these questions? So let's review again for people who don't know exactly what propertarianism is. It's a proposed system of law that wants to essentially extend the definition of property to create property in toto. So essentially make property touch things that are intangible, that are collectively owned, that are at a national or collective level. So things like nationhood, independence, your self-sufficiency, these would all be property. Your cultural pride, they would all be property, right? So this is an attempt to patch libertarianism because, as people like myself have pointed out, libertarianism and liberalism generally, and what is libertarianism other than a form of libertarianism, this ideology was destroyed because they weren't looking at the important cultural capital that was being essentially taken out from under their nose. They weren't looking at the schools. They weren't looking at the cultural zeitgeist. They were paying attention to these economic questions that were really secondary and downstream from the cultural ones when it ultimately comes down to it. And when it came to what really people were concerned about, they had no answers. They had no good answers. All they had was economic bromides. So in many ways, you could see propertarianism as a patch. But at the end of the day, propertarianism is a law. It's supposed to be crafting a new constitution. Now, I have to emphasize this. Propertarians, if you ask Kurt Doolittle, as he said in multiple interviews, propertarianism is a system of law. So it's what's legal and what's not legal. And specifically, they say, and this is extensive, they say that publicly lying, is going to be, if not illegal, then it's going to be something that the government will support lawsuits against you for. So this is the question. So basically, if you say something that's considered not true in terms of the propertarian worldview, it is illegal under the Constitution. So, simple question: will preaching Christianity be illegal under propertarianism? How simple a question could this possibly be? I don't exactly know how to make it simpler than this. We know from previous tweets and communications that Kurt Doolittle has made in his career that he has no love for Christianity, largely because he associates it with something that is called Abrahamism. Oh, I can't pronounce that word. Sorry, guys. He associates it with some sweeping ideology he calls Abrahamism. Okay, I mean, I know where he's going with this. He's trying to associate Christianity with its Jewish roots, and it has Jewish roots, undoubtedly. But he thinks, he'll say things, you know, again, I know this is really small for you guys on the screen, and I'm not so sure how the resolution's coming out on the live stream. So he says, Judaism to undermine Christianity. Judaism to undermine, Christianity to weaken, Islam to conquer and destroy. This is a statement of history for the past 2,000 years. So, okay, obviously, you know, this whole Abrahamism thing is sort of linked to sort of a fundamental suspicion of Judaism. I'm not going to comment on that, but this will be sort of ironic when we come. But the question about whether Christianity will be illegal under Propertarianism still holds. Will Christianity be illegal under Propertarianism? Okay, so I can tweet, "Hello, Kurt. One very, very simple question. Under Propertarian law, would it be legal to preach and teach Christ has risen?" Okay, that is the statement. It's a factual statement. Christ has risen. If you assert this statement, you are a Christian. If you deny of some sort, even if you're a bad or unorthodox one, if you deny this statement, you are not a Christian. This is, I can't come to a more important dividing line about what is Christian and what is not. Now, there are good ideologies, there are good bases for ethics, and there are bad ones. And I tend to think that Christianity is a good basis for ethics, and not a bad one, obviously. But unfortunately, Christianity, and in some sense it's different than more philosophical religions. If you don't adhere to this statement of fact, if you don't believe this statement of fact, then you can't properly call yourself a Christian. So this is really fundamental. This is if you cannot say this in public, then you cannot be Christian in public. Okay, simple question. Doesn't get answered. No answer to this question. Okay, so Kurt was not too happy with my video on Propertarianism. He had nothing but bad things to say about me after it was published. Fair enough. He seemed to think it was bad faith that I didn't have him on for an interview before I made a video criticizing Propertarianism. And, you know, this is what people do when they don't have... I find this kind of dishonest. There's no code among YouTubers that you have to have someone on a live stream before you make a video against them. I mean, as long as the video is more or less focused on ideas and not full of just ad hominems. I mean, if you make a video that's just like, this person is a total asshole, this person is human scum, maybe, you know, I'll be angry if you make that, but I won't be angry. It's the internet, right? I mean, but I won't be happy if it's a personal attack, or if it comes off as you know, if it comes off as a little bit sneaky or dishonest, you know, I won't be happy about it. But there's not an unwritten rule that like you have to have a live stream before you make a criticism of someone's ideas. There's nothing like that. But Kurt was very upset that I didn't. But I realized that when I was tweeting out these questions, as opposed to replying back to me, he was essentially just tweeting the answers out on his Twitter feed. So I learned that I could essentially get answers to my questions by paying attention to what Kurt Doolittle was posting to Facebook and Twitter. And so, we're going to go look here. So this is what he tweeted shortly after I asked him about Christianity. He says, quote, the Christian myths as factual would be illegal, but teaching the myths as myths and conveying truthful values through them is good, and Christianity does contain critically important truthful values. Okay, so this idea has been endorsed by Kurt. I think he's quoting somebody else, but this is an idea that he's endorsed several times in his channel. What he says currently is that he hasn't figured out a way to make it legal. Okay, so afterwards he sort of walks this back with another Facebook post where he says propertarian natural law is used to create normative political law. I mean, no shit, all law is normative, right? But truthfully, meaning that we must give special dispensation to devout Christians to lie about magic nonsense. Okay, so this created a problem for me because he seemed to be saying, and he did say, that essentially you could legislatively legalize Christianity, even though under a propertarian conception, the fundamental statement of Christianity would still be illegal. Okay, so we go forward from there, and this leads to another simple question. Well, okay, Kurt, so if you're saying that you can create a dispensation, and I think Kurt went on to say, and I don't know if I copied this tweet onto my lecture slides today, he said something to the effect of, we will negotiate this with Christians. They have to be able to give up their ability to make normative claims in public, and in exchange, they will get freedom of worship. And of course, and this is like the Islamic thing, like, if you're allowed to live as protected people where you can worship inside your churches as long as you don't preach Christianity too loudly to the masses. That's scary. So, but this leads to a more fundamental question. When Kurt says that he's going to negotiate over what's legal, and he said numerous times, "Oh, propertarianism, it's strict, it's ironclad. You can't bend it. That's how you're going to get a propertarianism, to give you parasite-free government." That's another one of their claims. This is the solution, guys. You can't bend this idea. So, if something is illegal under your constitution, how can you make Christianity, if Christianity is illegal under your constitution, how can a legislator negotiate for its legality? This is insane. Can a legislator overturn the Constitution? And of course, this is the thing I've learned happens, is what Kurt does is he says, read more. Read more of what, Kurt? One of the biggest problems with this whole thing is that you haven't given me a book. Like, what he means is read through all of my social media posts and follow me for years, and then you'll learn the answer to this question. This is a very simple question about priority, and it has no answer in this moment. Is my religion going to be illegal? Maybe. Can a legislator override the Constitution? It's somewhere in 7,000 posts on Facebook. But okay, I'm going to take a break here from the slides, answer the super chats, and see if everyone's doing all right in the chat. Tell me if there's any technical problems. Again, this is not my usual setup, so I apologize in advance if there are little hiccups here and there. Let me go to the super chats and see if anyone is waiting to come on and just correct me about how egregiously wrong I am about propertarianism. I don't see anything. Okay, let's go on to the super chats. I think I can do a drop down. Oh no, I probably can't. Okay. I believe there were two. Yes, two since we started. Okay, so Rusty Shackelford for $10. Thank you for your contribution very much. Could you comment briefly on what the right wing could do to influence culture? Is a right-wing media effort non-viable in the current internet environment? That is an excellent question. I think right-wing media efforts are very viable. I think that we have to think a little bit deeper than simply creating sort of the YouTube version of Fox News. That's not... I think we've done that before. I think what people need to do on the right wing is they need to think about, how do we get people to feel comfortable expressing right-wing ideas? We need to create fellowships. We need to create organizations that are both internet and local, that encourage people to make more content and that focus on the improvement of that content. And we need to look into education. And in this way, propertarianism, and Kurt, I think, realizes that education is a priority, is something that they need to pay attention to. But it's not something that I think... Well, I mean, we'll get to the problems. I mean, I don't think you can be an educator and go and tell people, you know, okay, buy my course, but guess what, guys? Civil war is coming. You know, if civil war is coming down the pipelines, you're only going to prepare for one thing, and that is winning the civil war. There's no need to. You don't want to learn about Greek philosophy when people are sharpening bayonets and digging trenches. That's ridiculous. So yes, thank you very much, Rusty. And we will. I think, you know, I'm going to be doing more streams on what to do. I think that will be my focus. Again, I'm going through a lot of life changes. We'll have to see how much time I can dedicate to this channel in the future. I think that, but this channel is not going anywhere. But we'll just have to see how much the content flows and does not flow. But I'm going to try to shift my efforts in empowering people who watch the channel to take action, to try to bring them in contact with more people. I think that's just the natural evolution of things. Okay, Raul Mercado for $20 Mexican. Thank you for your contribution. Just a small donation, he says. Extra ecclesiam nolla salus. Well, thank you very much. Yes, thanks for the contribution. Every little bit helps, guys. I really appreciate it. And I think there's 2 more super chats that are going on. Yeah. Okay, I see. Outside of the super chats, I see Pragmatic Culture calling me a softie. Yeah. Well, I think I have some harsh criticisms of Curt Doolittle. We're going to get to them. We're going to get to them. I'm sorry. I probably should. If I was at all as savvy as John Mark with my presentation, this video would just be a huge Curt Doolittle bashing session. But I feel sort of bound to at least give the best interpretation I can for this stuff. So, sorry guys, because I know I'm a little bit frustrated with these people at this stage. So, Julian Peacock for $10. Thank you for your contribution. I love these people who want to preserve Judeo-Christian values while calling all the things backing it a load of BS. It hasn't worked before and it won't work now. Good to finally catch a stream. Well, thank you very much. There's going to be something that we're going to see that's going to be very ironic that Curt said on Ray's stream. And I don't want it to be a gotcha moment, but I laughed. I didn't say why I laughed my butt off with this stream. Well, there's several reasons why I laughed my butt off for a particular 5-minute segment that we're going to play at the end of this. But there are 2 reasons, one of which I think is an intellectual mistake. The other one, which is a really, really funny intellectual mistake that I still can't believe Curt didn't understand. Okay, so Charlemagne, yeah, for $5, the Civil War talk needs to stop. It's dangerous and we will lose. And we'll burn our civilization to ashes in the process. Yeah, that's absolutely right. Even if you're threatening civil war, like what you need is you need a negotiating body. You need activist organizations. You need to be able to have legitimacy in the eyes of the people. In the event of a civil war, almost certainly the Chinese party will come around to support Blue America. In which case, the Blue America will be willing to give away any part of America in order to win the Civil War. Because that's what people do in civil wars. They do anything to win. And so there's just so many vectors that are unpredictable. No, I can't rule out a right-wing victory because war's uncertain. And there's always uncertainties. But the Civil War talk, every time you talk about Civil War, even in a predictive sense, you weaken the perspective political hand of the right-wing movement in this country. And that's why I think that, or in the West generally, and that's why I think a lot of people are suspicious of Curt Doolittle. So thank you very much, Charlemagne. I need to have you on for an interview sometime. Did I hear you on Endeavor's channel? I heard you on some channel, and I said, oh, well, I really have to talk more with this person. Anyway, I don't know if I have anything really that deep to talk to you about, but it sounded like you had some interesting ideas. So anyway, I think I'm following your channel, but keep up the good work. N4VY Blue Eyes for $5. I'm working on a video sharing site that will encourage content creators to debate each other. Any ideas, features you may like? So I guess, would this be sort of like Blogging Heads TV? I like the idea, but I like the idea of a channel. And I think it's a great idea. I always encourage people to make their own sites. I would say don't reinvent the wheel, right? If you have a video player that you trust not to censor you, just use that service. And then you can host the site independently and use their storage space so you're not you're not spending, thousands of dollars to keep, terabytes of video data on your own dime. But that sounds a great idea. Send me a link when you're done. So Carlo Danger for $10. After listening to No White Guilt, Propertarian takedown on JF, there seems to be pretty interesting angle that Kurt is is a Fed. Okay, seems that there's an FBI angle in the past to shut down right-wing groups. That's interesting, and we'll discuss that a little bit later in the stream too. I hate to hear all these questions that I know I'm going to try to answer, Leo the Great for $5. But thank you for your contribution, Leo. This will have to be the last two because I need to get back to the agenda. Leo the Great for $5. No, I'll answer super chats later, but we'll have to just segment them a little bit more. Leo the Great for $5. Would you consider joining the Knights of Columbus? I would certainly consider joining the Knights of Columbus. I think I have to have a discussion with the missus on that one. She's not the hottest on the Knights of Columbus, and I think that would be interesting content. But there are problems with the organization, but I've heard them do great things too. So I think that will have to be something I consider for the future. Carlo Danger for $10. Can you ever do a stream with Borzo Boshkovic? You two have similar critiques of modernity. He's one of the better content creators at TRS. Lost that tweet. A pause button episode at least. I am assuming a pause button is a show on TRS, but definitely sounds good to me. I'm always looking to talk with people who have interesting opinions. Anyway, so I'm just going to go on with this. And again, if people have angles they want me to get to, we'll get to it. I can maximize this again. Sorry, guys. I got to get this more streamlined. I feel like an amateur every time I do this. But we are going to full screen. At any rate. All right, guys. Okay, so I think Kurt Doolittle at this point sort of gives me the propertarian version of educate yourself. But again, he just keeps on tweeting. And he keeps on posting on Facebook, which I think is his preferred medium. He's done Facebook forever. And so now he keeps on tweeting and tweeting and tweeting and posting and posting and posting about Christianity and religion. And you have all of these bizarre opinions that start spilling out of Kurt Doolittle's mouth, and they get weirder and weirder. And you get Kurt Doolittle on Facebook saying, I care about preserving Christianity's 30,000 sects for Christians and their globalist, universalist, egalitarian disease. Well, I don't know what to say, Kurt. This globalist universalism thing, it's only gotten really bad in the secular age. So, but anyway, he goes on. Advancing our natural religion of the hearth for heathens and nationalists, the sciences for secularists, and the laws for those of us who must rule. And let the market accommodate people's needs. Christianity will be the feminine underclass religion. Heathenism, the masculine middle class, and those of us with power and agency will need none. Okay, so basically, I think Kurt imagines himself as the Andrew Ryan overclass with maybe Lana Lochtef or whatever being the middle class, and then I can see his concept of Christians a little bit being like that, the virgin from the Virgin Chad meme or whatever. But this is what are you gonna make of this? But anyway, this is kind of funny, right? Like him imagining. I can't help but go back to BioShock when I see this. Maybe he'll have all the Christians working at the fisheries, or something like that. But if I were to give a rather uncharitable summary of propertarianism, I would say it's basically objectivism for like autistic boomers. But I'll go on. Okay, but this is where it gets really funny. Oh no, I cut off part of this. Well, I'll read from my slides here. So I'm afraid that the thing hasn't completely. Okay, so this is a few hours after he said that, he tweets this: "You expect as a noob to jump into propertarianism, natural law, like you do in some democratic era ideology? Sorry, kid, it's pretty hard. If you're going to take another form of advanced mathematics, take a course in advanced programming, or take an advanced course in the writing of international law, then you might have some idea of the work it takes. Most people lurk here for 3 to 6 months, and it seems like the very smartest people need a year, and on average, 2 or more years. So when I talk about religion, you have no idea what I'm talking about. But like every other idiot, you assume because you feel passionately about religion or politics, you seem to have some understanding of it. Nope. Learn something. Learn something. This is the most profound advancement in thought since empiricism. We completed the Enlightenment. Just deal with it." I mean, I know it's cut off for you guys, but this is just... I almost expect him to say something like, you have to have a pretty high IQ. You have to watch Rick and Morty a lot to understand propertarianism. Yeah, you have to have a pretty high IQ to understand Kurt's Facebook posts about wanting to be the secular overclass with a heathen middle class and a virgin Christian feminine underclass. I mean, 120 IQ, that's not going to cut it. You have to be topping 155 to get this level of intensity. I mean, you have to study for years to attain the heights of Kurt Doolittle. Kurt Doolittle hasn't written a book, like a single book. He hasn't self-published a book on this idea. What am I supposed to read? Am I supposed to wade through 7,000 Facebook posts which are phrased like this? I know he's creating a website, but we're going to get into that. We're going to get into that because this is insane. I can't quite even process this. This last sentence: we completed the Enlightenment. Just deal with it. This is sort of delusional stuff. I don't know what to make of this, and the stuff is, to my knowledge, still on Facebook. I mean, you can go see this. But yeah, so we're already far afield here. So this kind of brings me to the question: who is Kurt Doolittle, and where do his ideas come from? So Kurt Doolittle thinks he has solved everything. And he thinks he's solved everything with this idea of law called propertarianism. Now, I think everyone who's saw this has pointed out there's a problem. So the idea is essentially to make lying illegal and to make property extend things that are intangible. The two problems is that when lying becomes illegal and property becomes intangible, the evaluation of the literal evaluation of the property, the valuation, how much it's worth in terms of dollars, becomes totally subjective, and whether something is true or not becomes totally subjective. Now, Kurt Doolittle alludes to the fact that he has a system for objectively and consistently coming to this. But apparently the system is so complicated that you need years to learn the system. Now, of course, this is clever. Well, it's not that clever because people have been doing this for thousands of years. People have been saying, oh, well, let's just ban lying for a really long time. And they've been asserting that they have rationalistic systems to overcome the problems with subjectivity. But the difficulty, again, is that there is no way to overcome the subjectivity of this, at least that we know of. And I think there's just computational complexity components that are literally interfering with our ability to comprehend these ideas. So, perhaps I should back up. We'll get into the difficulties of propertarianism with some simple examples. But Kurt Doolittle's mode is to essentially allude to the fact that he has some super complicated objective system to tackle these unsolved problems. It's not in a book, because a book would tie him down. What it is going to be, it's in 7,000 Facebook posts, which, no propertarian that I've encountered seems to give the same answers to some fundamental questions I've given. They all give me different ones. So it can't be anything anyone who's recently followed Kurt Doolittle on social media understands. But he promises that you can master this by taking his courses, and the website he points you to is propertarianism.org. Okay, so let's take a look. What is propertarianism.org? Well, again, if my boomer hands can master this, we can take a look at this. Again, sorry guys, out of full screen. Okay, so this is propertarianism.org. I'm not going to comment on the fact that, you know, what's going on in the background here is just stock footage. I did sign up for an account, and if you sign up for an account on the little top thing, you'll realize that this is all organized through a pre-made system on WordPress.com. So it appears that there's not like a professional web designer here. They're using a WordPress.com template or a modified WordPress.com template. And okay, but still this looks fairly official. And what this promises is essentially education. And you look here, programs, courses, you know, this all looks pretty official. There's events. Okay, so I'm logged in. I want to get a degree program, so I'm going to go click on this here. Learn more. Okay, tell me, what is this degree program about? Okay, we're loading. Boom. First page, earn a degree. What do I read? Plura mihi bona sunt inclima amari petre velum. Okay, so people might not recognize this. This is filler. This is what's called lorem ipsum Latin. It's stuff that people put in text when they don't care what goes there. Now, keep in mind, like, I've signed up for this website. This website offers a product to me, right? It's offering a product and it's charging me. Like, I can go here and we can go up to these courses, right? This might take some time to load. You know, maybe we'll go to general here, right? Oh, that's all coming soon, right? Okay. We'll go to all courses here. These are things that are being charged for. Okay, one's free. Okay, this is $100. Testimonials in the method. Keep in mind, there are about 100 or so courses on the site. Every single one of them is being taught by Kurt Doolittle. You can pay money for these things, apparently. And the description of them is filler Latin. It's nothing. It's gibberish. The description of the program is gibberish. You know, until recently, the description of most of these courses was gibberish Latin. You don't do this in business. You don't put a product with a price tag on it and then have the product be filled with sawdust. What happens if someone would buy this? That would essentially communicate to your customers that you're selling them a phony product. Plus, I don't think Kurt Doolittle is going to teach 100 courses himself. There's no indication that anyone's involved in this other than Kurt Doolittle. I'm sorry, and this people realize that the explanation you get from propertarians is, oh, don't worry, this is a new site. This is something that's a work in progress. We're doing, you know, you can't expect us to build Rome in a day. You know, this takes time, guys. We have to populate the courses. We have to get instructors. We have to vet them. Obviously, this is you know, and universities do take a long time to construct, even online ones. I'm not going to knock that. Okay, two things. This website's been around for months at this stage. I've been following this site for about 4 months since I heard about propertarianism in the fall. It's been around for longer if you look at web archives at propertarianism.com and propertarianism.org. This has still, after months and months and months, it has not purged the lorem ipsum gibberish from its website, meaning it still has Latin gibberish filler text behind products that have money tags on them and behind degree programs that have money tags on them. Okay, so in addition to being incredibly slow, like, you don't do this in business. You don't offer a product and have, I mean, maybe this is a prototype, but like, who are you selling this to? I mean, it's been months and months and months and months. I don't know, and it's been months, and I want to go to Kurt Doolittle and ask him, like, will my degree be done before or after the Civil War is completed that you're inevitably going to win? Should I be taking a course in sharpening my bayonet? I mean, why should I take a course in engineering statistics when you're about to go to DEFCON 3 in a war against the federal government? This makes absolutely no sense. And one thing that is very clear about this, and you can look on this, and Kurt does go to great lengths talking about himself. I can't find it right here, but at any rate, he well, I'll find it later. And according to this biography, Kurt Doolittle is he founded several companies. He I guess he presents himself as someone who's independently wealthy, who's made it big in business, and he implies that he's in tech. I've known a lot of people who've owned their own tech companies. And he also lives in Kiev, Ukraine. Okay, most people who are doing tech stuff don't live in Kiev. I know people live in Kiev. They're usually involved with the federal government because the federal government has a lot of interests in Kiev since it's currently a war zone. Kiev, Ukraine is not a big tech hub. Second, most people who are independently wealthy, who have like a cool million that they can put towards some kind of end, like they made it big in business and they're just cooling their heels on top of their big piles of money, they can drop a website in a week. It doesn't take them 4 months to drop a WordPress.com site with lorem ipsum text, half a dozen places, and a promise to teach over 100 courses themselves. They have connections, they have web developers, they can do it. Number 3, any businessman worth his salt knows that you don't put a price tag on something that's not ready to bring to market. I don't know, man. Like, I want to be charitable to this, but this is a big red flag. This does not sound legitimate. I mean, and I could ask questions about this, but it does not make sense. But anyway, this is what it is. Apparently, at some point, we're going to get a product here. Okay, I'm going to read some super chats here because I see some relevant stuff going on, and I guess this will be a longer stream. But thank you guys for bearing with me. I wonder how many people are on the stream. If you don't mind me just checking really quickly. Okay, fair number. Okay, but let's get back to propertarianism and the super chats. Okay. Okay, well, I hope I didn't miss any, but I have Pragmatic Culture for $2 saying, we was Enlightenment completers and shit. Well, yeah, thank you for your contribution, man. That's pretty much it. I mean, this is essentially like a big claim ahead of any product. I want to know the method by which Kurt Doolittle is going to get people to get consistent answers in law. Because law without consistency is bullshit. Everyone knows that. I think even Kurt Doolittle knows this. He seems like he has a solution, and it's behind essentially courseware. It's behind a 6-month course or however many months he says to even understand how it would consistently be applied. And I'm going to go into the problem with this. I mean, it's obvious what the problem is, but I'm gonna try to put it a little bit more sharply in a little bit. So Brain Right for $10 says, buy Kurt a fedora. Yeah, basically propertarianism is government through fedora tipping. It's asserting that science solves everything and I have the solution, but it's too complicated. Only people with a really high IQ could understand this super secret solution I have to understanding one of humanity's oldest problems of consistency in law. Okay. Again, if you're a propertarian, just, DM me on Twitter right now. We can Skype on this, I don't know why, if you feel like you have some input on this, we can go through the site together, and you might be able to fill me in on what the deal is with Kurt Doolittle. So Rashid Abdul Salam for $5, thank you very much for your contribution, says he is using tech startup tactics. The site is a splash page to get emails and measure the interest in paid users, to market to investors, if it's legit. Yeah, that's what I get the sense too. What he wants to do is measure exactly how much people are going to pay him for doing this, and then do it. Oh, but that's not how he's presenting it. He's presenting propertarianism as a finished product. If he didn't present it that way, he wouldn't be going around saying, "Oh, I've solved the problem. I've solved the problem of law and government, guys. The Enlightenment is complete. Quest completed. We did it. We did it, guys. We figured out how to do Enlightenment-based government." That's how Kurt and John Mark are talking about this idea. If it's complete, like, show me the money. It's out of beta testing, right? But we don't have anything. We don't have a book. All we have is follow Kurt Doolittle on media for a year before you can begin to understand and buy my courseware, which is obviously not ready to go. So you have to give me $100 in anticipation of the fact that we're going to have this courseware available for you. Yeah, this is a live website. So Julian Peacock for $2, thank you for your contribution. Does propism, I think it means propertarianism, tackle the problem of wrong versus lying? Yes, we're going to get into that too. An excellent point. Thank you very much. But anyway, I think it's time to get going, move on from the website, because we've been doing this for a while. I don't see any propertarians DMing me, so we're going to go right on to this, propertarianism.org. We covered that. Okay, so the next thing we have the infamous Ray Murasami live stream. This was hilarious. And again, thank you for your super chats, guys, but we're just going to have to wait for them. But this is something that I hope everyone has this here, that I found was really, really funny. So I'm going to play this as if it were something that we were watching for a distance, and we're going to go through it. I think it's in the right place. I think 138 is what I had.
I mean, that's not, I mean, it was that, and that's whatever. They weren't these, we forget that these people were living in.
Okay, I think I have it a little bit too far, guys. Forgive me.
Meaning that someone hasn't been able to testify and prove that God is real, then God is real. What do you want me to do?
Yeah, but would you, sir?
Okay, so I have to clarify here for the audience. So after Kurt Doolittle and I had our little Twitter spat. Oh, did I miss a super chat, guys? I think I might have. If I have, actually, I'm going to pause this right here and go to the super chat button on my thing. Because one of my moderators is telling me I missed one. I think that's what Blackjack's trying to communicate to me. I don't think I have Blackjack. I'll do it at the end in case I missed one, okay? At any rate, at any rate, the Ray and Kurt Doolittle are talking about Christianity and the propertarian perspective on Christianity. And that's what Ray and her co-host are talking about here on her podcast.
Serve him, that's the question.
I mean, if he's real, he's real. I mean, what's your argument for not serving him then?
Like, I mean, like, let me give you an example here. The guy who used to run Sweden, what's his name? Loffen. Loffen is real. Will you serve him?
Yeah, but that's not...
You see what I mean? That's where I'm going with this.
So, by the way, Ray is talking about how even if God is real, she wouldn't serve him. So this is a new atheist argument. There are excellent Christian responses to this, but As new atheists are wont to do, they pretend like these 2,000-year-old arguments are something that they just thought of. And of course, Kurt Doolittle is going to be quite epic about this in a few seconds.
Just because something exists doesn't mean you have to bow down to it now.
Good use of my time. This is a nonsense argument. The argument is you can't testify it. You can't claim it's true.
Okay, so this is the first thing. So Kurt Doolittle says this. He says, if you can't testify to it, you can't testify that it's true. So this is a key distinction, because one of the questions here, and one of the questions, if you're taking propertarianism seriously, you have to ask, is it a positive requirement that things demonstrate that they're true, or is it a negative one? Are only statements that can be provably false testimonially something that we could legally hold liable? Because that's more realistic. But here, Kurt Doolittle is saying the exact opposite. He's saying that you cannot make any statement that isn't itself testimonial. And so this is something that is we're going to see in action.
Period. That's it. There's nothing more complicated than that.
Yeah,
so you can't prove anything. You can just eliminate the chances of falseness. You can't eliminate the chance of falseness. You can't testify it. As far as we know, it's all been lies. There's plenty of people. There's lots of dead gods. We know what the origin of all the biblical stories is. We know they were stolen from, parts pieced together from pre-existing stories.
Okay, and 5 seconds after saying that you can't state something unless you testify it, Kurt Doolittle says he knows historically how something occurred. Is he testifying to that? No, he's not. This is a speculation, and we'll see where that speculation comes to shortly. Again, Kurt Doolittle is coming from the perspective, mind you, that Christianity is wrong because it's part of something called Abrahamism. It has this association with these bad Jewish ideas that you don't want mixed with European ones. So let's take this a little bit further.
This guy, Jesus, may or may not have existed. I'm in the camp he did exist. There's enough. There's no great record, but there's enough. Sure, he was the son of it looks like he was the son of a Roman soldier and a Jewish prostitute. It looks like that he went off, and God knows where he went for a while, but he came back and he got pissed off.
Okay, so we're going to pause this here. He was the son of a Roman soldier and a Jewish prostitute. Oh boy. Now, when I was listening to this with my wife, and we were traveling in the car, and she said, "Oh." And I was laughing immediately, and she said, "Oh, that's like Life of Brian, right? He's getting that from Life of Brian." I'm like, "No, that's not why I'm laughing. There's a place where this comes from. This myth comes from the Talmud, Kurt Doolittle." Yeah. Yes, Kurt Doolittle. Owning the Talmud, quoting the Talmud to own Christianity for being an Abrahamic myth. Brilliant. And most scholars don't take this seriously. Most scholars consider this to be essentially Jewish propaganda, post hoc, to discredit Christian claims and try to get Jews to convert. Most people consider this to be counter-propaganda from the Talmud and from other non-converting Jews after Christ's resurrection. Kurt Doolittle quotes it like it's fact, 5 seconds after saying that he's only going to entertain testimonial truth. So apparently, Kurt Doolittle has had some direct first-hand testimony that the Talmud is the proper way to understand and operate history and Christianity, is to go to the Talmud. Our champion against Abrahamism, ladies and gentlemen, the Talmudic scholar Kurt Doolittle. Brilliant. But wait, it gets better. Let's learn more about these great historical insights to how Christianity, how it's false, how it's been cobbled together from different sources.
Because his people were angry and he got in trouble for it with the law. Now, but if you look at what the biblical story is, an attempt to take the New Testament and create a competition for what was the Bible of the ancient world, which was the Iliad. And so they replaced the heroic trial of Achilles with the heroic trial of Jesus.
This is the other thing. The heroic trial of Achilles from the Iliad. What the hell are you talking about, Kurt? The trial of Achilles from the... No, Kurt, it's the trial of Socrates. The Fedora myth is that Jesus is the retelling of the trial of Socrates. Achilles wasn't on trial in the Iliad. There wasn't a trial and death of Achilles in the Iliad. Achilles looks nothing... Keep in mind that Kurt here is trying to claim, right, that this was cobbled... He starts this paragraph by saying, Jesus' myth was cobbled together from different myths, and they replaced the heroic trial and death of Achilles with the heroic trial and death of Jesus, because these things are equivalent, right? Like they're like, okay, what do we need here? Oh, well, we have a trial and death of Achilles in the Iliad. Let's just replace that with the trial and death of Jesus. There wasn't a trial and death of Achilles in the Iliad. That's the trial and death of Socrates. He can't even get his own Fedora myths properly quoted here. The atheist argument is always this: the trial and death of Socrates. Achilles is not put on trial in the Iliad. There is a trial that's a minor fixture of the Iliad, but Achilles isn't put on trial. He kills Hector, and Hector's father has to beg for Hector's body. That's the chief tragedy of the Iliad. Achilles is nothing like Jesus. He's not a moral teacher. He's not a pious man. In fact, the very opposite. He, in many ways, is contemptuous of the gods. He has pride and too much of it. And in many ways, this is the whole point of the Iliad. It's the whole point of Homer is to essentially show the consequences of pride on the behalf of mortals. And that's not what Jesus is whatsoever. Now, some Propertarians on Twitter were saying something like, no, what he means is the trials of Achilles, like the many hardships he went over. So if you had agon or whatever, the Greek word for struggle is kind of similar to the word for trial, except that, the gospel is written in Greek too, and it does not use that word for Jesus's trials. It uses that word for struggle, which is why that Greek word does not appear inside the gospel until you talk about the Christians' struggle against the authorities in the epistolary sections. So Kurt, it's so obvious here that Kurt meant to say the trial and death of Socrates, but like he literally says the Iliad. It's the biggest facepalm moment. I can't believe this. But let's go on.
And you can see how they went about this literature and tried to fabricate these stories. Did he arise on the third day? I don't know, but it's pretty likely they stole his body.
Well, if he if he rose on the third day, he can't steal his body, Kurt.
So if he was put there, so I don't really understand why this is. Historicism is what it is, science is what it is, evidence is what it is, and this is all made up bullshit. On that case, it doesn't really matter, because the fundamental teaching of Christianity, which is basically
don't be too quick about it, Kurt. You should have had a while to get this down, right?
The commons is sacred. And then the words don't impose costs on others. I got to see if I can do this off the top of my head. It's late at night, so I might not be able to. The extension of kinship love to non-kin, personal acts of charity, the extension of forgiveness until it can no longer be extended, and I'm missing one.
Okay, that's itself a misquote. I do not think. Well, there are some inaccuracies about this, but I'll go on. This is essentially the very same Protestant conception of Christianity. That Christianity is nothing but the Sermon on the Mount, and is simply an ethical condition that needs to be deracinated and isolated from its spiritual component. So, it's so funny that Kurt here is rehashing the very perspective which gave us social justice warriors, that gave us modern progressivism, and he's essentially commending it.
So this is the optimum group evolutionary strategy for anyone, but the harm of Christianity is it leaves us vulnerable to all this immigration stuff and all this other don't ship the slaves back to Africa stuff, and
shipping the slaves back to Africa was a Christian movement, Kurt. It was.
In other words, it comes with lots of baggage. It comes with lots of extra baggage in addition to the 5 things that you like. Which obviously, yeah, because of the fact that lies are involved, this is what happens.
So my whole thing with Christianity says there was a guy. He was a pretty good guy. He had a really good idea. Stop trying to take advantage of each other. Love each other like family. And we're going to be okay, despite the fact that we're ruled, right, by others.
Yeah. Jesus' message wasn't, we're going to be okay. It was actually the opposite of that. He said, we have to do something extraordinary because we're not going to be okay, because judgment is coming. But okay, we're returning to the concept of Christianity the same way that Protestant progressives do.
Right? That's it. It's not complicated, right? Does he have to invent a bunch of lies to be able to reinforce that with people who have, room temperature IQs and fun ghosts for a living? Yeah, I'm sure. Right? I mean,
you have to have a pretty high IQ to understand Kurt's critique. I mean, pretty high IQ to just understand all the truth he's laying down here.
That's not. I mean, it was that, and that's whatever. They weren't. These, we forget that these people were living in in the equivalent of guys don't remember this, but there was a time when the Bronx was like burned out buildings and cars left by the side of the road, right? And that's what these people were. They were very poor people of limited ability, and they weren't exactly favored, and that's what they did. So I'm not really, it's completely understandable in history. The thing is, what happened in the past? Let's not try to go recreate the past. Irony. Let's try to see what we can do going forward. What remains of Christianity is good. Our religion is dependent upon, which as most Indo-European religions are dependent upon, a gathering, a storytelling, which is parable, a oath, which is our Lord's Prayer, but in the past it was something quite different. It was basically, I won't steal from each other, lie and cheat, steal from.
Okay, the Lord's Prayer is not a rehash of a moral principle in oath form, but I looked at where Kurt was getting this, and later in the podcast, I think he's getting this from Karen Armstrong, which is another thing, because Karen Armstrong is essentially the mouthpiece of progressive Christianity. And I think she's an ex-Catholic progressive Christian, and he's essentially taking her model on the fundamental verisimilitude between all faiths as a basis for making his statements about Christianity here. So, I mean, that's, again, like, his two sources are progressive anti-conservatives, basically Progressive Academy, and the Talmud. That's where he's getting this stuff from.
And I won't run from battle. And then you have a feast, which is what the communion is. And then you have a few festivals to reinforce this. So it's a constant reinforcement of our oath to each other. Well, I mean, great. Christianity also says, by the way, not only that, but let's get together and make sure that we reinforce this mutual trust and love of each other by being exhaustively forgiving of each other. And then let's have holidays where the classes mingle a bit, so we realize that we're all still human, despite our different roles. So why can't we have a real religion instead of this fucking bunch of desert death cult lies? And I'm like, well, there's no evidence we need one. There's every evidence that what's provided by
okay, I'm sorry, I can't. I just have to laugh a little bit. Okay, let's keep on going.
The prayer disciplines or whatever is just cognitive behavioral therapy that can produce by positive means rather than destructive means. So let's evolve our religion and decide what we actually need, because the one we got right now is being crushed by modernity. And a rap.
Yeah. Embracing cognitive behavioral therapy and progressive theology to own modernity. Good job, Kurt. Is this the same way you're going to embrace the Talmud to own Abrahamism? I love this logic. I just love it.
But exit of any and all members from participation, except, again, the rural South.
You mean the people you're counting on to fight and win a civil war for you, Kurt?
That was absolutely beautifully delivered. Honestly, that was fantastic.
Okay, I think that pretty much covers that little microcosmic 5 minutes. More or less covers the entire podcast done between Ray Murasamy and Kurt Doolittle. Yes, Kurt oscillates between commending heathenistic paganism and saying that we should all be scientific materialist atheists. You know, because he's figured out that this would be more efficient by whatever means, super secret means that are behind a paywall on the website that you have to pay $100 to use. He quotes the Talmud to own Abrahamism, and he goes on to endorse progressive theological positions and cognitive behavioral therapy to get around the problems of modernity. Yeah, embracing the Talmud to own Abrahamism and embracing moral therapeutic deism to own modernity, sputtering this out in between ums and uhs and sentence fragments and asides. And that's beautifully delivered, Kurt. Beautiful. Just slow clap that. Just, oh my God, it's amazing. How could you think of something so beautiful? But this is hilarious stuff. Oh, hold on. I see someone from the chat. We'll take a break here and we'll add super chats. But apparently, is Kurt Doolittle watching this? Okay, someone's saying I should go see his Twitter account. I hope people forgive that digression. Hey, Kurt, you can come on anytime, dude. You can come on and straighten me out about this. Maybe I haven't got your Talmudic perspective on Jesus quite correct. And you can point out to me just why Abrahamism is the most terrible thing ever, but the Talmudic view on theology and Jesus is the correct one. But anyway, yeah, again, I linked to the 5 minutes of this, but again, like, why spend your time tweeting about this? You can literally come on and talk to me right now. You can have my Skype. I'll send it to you. You know, I'll even reply to you right now for what it's worth. Yeah, come on, Kurt. Let's talk this out. Okay. But anyway, yeah. So this is a huge. I mean, this is essentially the most hilarious element of fedora tipping, and people look, autism is overused. The fedora imagery is overused. You know, indeed it is. I don't like the word autism used as pejorative. It's a medical condition. It's serious. You know, people's lives have been destroyed by it, and you know, on the high, and also saying someone's autistic is an insult to discredit their ideas is stupid. There are brilliant geniuses who are autistic, who are on the spectrum, but there's an intellectual mistake that's going on in our society right now that's associated with doing the kind of thing that people who are autistic do, and that is they have a symbolic model of how things are supposed to work, and they confuse this model for reality. And we constantly have to bring it back to the fact that you're saying that you have an empirical idea of how law works, Kurt. So empirical means tested. Where have you tested propertarianism? That's what empirical should mean. It doesn't. What it means is that his model inside his head is empirical. That's not empirical. That's theoretical. We're really almost the opposite of empirical. But anyway, so let's go on. So with this, I think we're kind of done with more. Maybe I should do super chats now. Actually, I will do super chats. Let's see. Let's reset this page and do some super chats. Maybe Kurt will get back to me and for the last half an hour we can talk over. No, I don't want you to translate this. We'll have to reload this. Sorry, guys. Maybe for the last half an hour we can go over Kurt's ideas with the man, the myth, the legend himself. Okay, so super chats. Okay, for £10, thank you very much. It's 10 euros. I'm sorry. I always get the symbols of those too confused. Physes says, this is painfully ignorant and your obsession with civil war is clearly a bad faith critique. There's a whole index blog and also a long essay called Intro to Propertarianism. Intro to Propertarianism does not answer the questions I brought to it. I've read it. It's very vague about these questions that I'm bringing to it. How do you discern this? Oh, my obsession with civil war. When someone says civil war is imminent and we're going to win it, like, they cannot claim that I shouldn't pay attention to that. That immediately, as long as a person who's saying civil war is coming is associated with me, that makes it my problem. So, Feces, anyone who's a propertarian, come on the stream right now. Answer my questions. They're really simple questions about the procedural methods that you can use to get propertarianism to work. Dude, I appreciate the super chat. Thank you for your contribution. That essay is vague. It's hand-wavy. The reason why the essay is not a book, and Mencius Mollbug turned his essays into books quite successfully, as someone who I admire a lot more, who I think he's a blogger that essentially became an ideas person, and I think much more successfully and much more honestly. When you write a book, people are like, okay, this is the complete idea. If it's an essay called Intro to, you can hand wave your way at all of the hard problems and all of the hard questions. People will be like, oh, it's written elsewhere. But I don't want to have that excuse if it's written elsewhere. The idea of legalizing lying in public manifests certain very specific questions, very specific problems that have to do with acute issues. And we'll go into this. The last section of this talk will be dedicated to this. And I want to get people into a position where they have to answer these questions and they can't hand wave at them. And you can't tell me that these simple questions require 6 months to discern, because you're telling me that this is going to be law. And if it's going to be law, people have to understand that law and they have to adjudicate it consistently. So it has to be simple enough for that to be the case. Okay, thank you very much. For $20, the Collier Report. Thank you for your contribution. Kurt is another Christ hater. He literally uses SJW techniques and invalidates Christians as the privileged class who, while he calls to silence them, are only outraged because they are losing their privilege. Yeah, I mean, this is what's so funny, and this sort of should tell you something. Ray is essentially, she's a Marxist third worldist. I'm not going to say she's a communist. She's certainly a socialist. And yet Kurt and her are just bandying back and forth about how they agree on everything spiritual. Kurt, Ray Marasame is scheduled to debate me on why white people and no other race should pay reparations. You sure you don't have any really fundamental spiritual or normative disagreements with this woman? I mean, this is a problem, right? I mean, we should. You think your battle lies with the Christians? I don't know. The difficulty is that propertarianism is would be just equally at home. It's actually more at home on the left than it is on the right. Propertarianism claims to be the completion of the left's project. It's the completion of the Enlightenment, the creation of the scientific law that phrases everything in material terms. That's the completion of the left's project. This is not something that is something that is particularly right wing. Now, I know that there's been ideas like objectivism, which is, I think, the closest thing to propertarianism, and other sort of libertarian ideologies that have been radically secular and been more Enlightenment influenced. But this is not something that is ipso facto or prima facie something that's on the right wing. And I think what eventually will happen is when Kurt gets a few more hitbacks, I think he's going to transition to becoming part of the mainstream left. I think that he's going to try to do that transition because I think he's more at home on the left wing than on the right. But yeah, he does use SJW language when it comes to Christians. For $2, Gihrin Zabi, Kurt is influenced by Savitri Devi, FYI. That is absolutely true. I believe Savitri Devi was one of the founders of Theosophy, if I'm not mistaken. I think we're thinking about the same mathematician spiritualist from the early 20th century, late 19th century. I could be wrong about this. a fascinating figure. I need to do more research on this character and do a video on her or some explanation of her ideas. I think that the early Theosophists are more influential than they usually get credit for, but thank you for your contribution. That's an excellent person to look to when you're looking for the origin of this, you know, the completion of the Enlightenment to spirituality and law type deal that you get from the left, and sometimes for people who are claiming that they're right-wingers. Pretzeldorf, there seemed to be no shortage of grifters on the right, Kurt included. To me, they seem to be the heaviest baggage on the right. Your thoughts? Well, I mean, grifters and people with crackpot ideas, you know, this is one of the reasons why I didn't make this video. You know, until Kurt and John Mark started talking about Civil War, I thought they were just sort of interesting crackpots that might have some interesting ideas. I have no problem with atheists on the right. There is a huge place for atheists and especially agnostics on the right. I think that more needs to be done to create spaces for agnostics to explore their spiritual dimension on the right. And atheists are a part of the right wing too. You know, I have disagreements with them, but you know, there's a place for them. And I was perfectly willing to sort of like give this person an interview on a more friendly medium. When the Civil War talk started, that possibility ended. What makes the crackpots and grifters heavy is the fact that they get people involved in things that rip them off from money, like Kurt's website seemingly does. And when they get people to expose themselves to being arrested for being by saying loudly, "I'm preparing for civil war." That's why Kurt has become dangerous to other right-wing elements. This is why people think Kurt Doolittle is a Fed. His current location in Kiev is kind of suspect for someone who's supposedly a tech guy, who's a startup CEO. Yeah, this is, you know, but regardless, I'm not going to cast aspersions on his motivations or speculations. I shouldn't do that. But his talk of civil war is what's dangerous. It threatens everything that people are trying to accomplish in the reactionary and right-wing movements and the dissident right now. And that's what makes this very, 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 very difficult. For $10, Julius Caesar, Dave, your Molebug video was a breakthrough. Also, have you seen the video called Doolittle is Siege Pilled? He sounds like a Bond villain. If an Antifa guy talked like that, I would be enraged. No, if an Antifa person talked like Kurt Doolittle, I'd just crack up. The only reason why this isn't just a lolcow is maybe this is, you know, maybe this is the TRS lolcow. This is the thinking man's lolcow is Kurt Doolittle. But you know, the reason why this isn't a lolcow and I'm taking this seriously is that I'm seriously concerned that someone's going to go out and dynamite a railway system in preparation for this idiotic idea of civil war that Doolittle's, you know, and he can't be that serious about this. He can't be like, he literally has tweets that's like, "Get your rifles, boys, civil war is down the line." And then he's like, "Oh, well, you know, in 2 years, a year after I get my Propertarianism site running, then after a year's worth of buying courses, you might have an idea about how to do Propertarianism." Kurt, if that's your timeline, we're not heading towards a civil war. Like, if you're preparing for civil war, you're not waiting 6 months for a website to come online so that you can sign up for in 6 months to take a 6-month course. That's not your agenda. So I don't know. This is just silly. I don't know how to take this seriously. But thank you so much for your compliment. A lot of people apparently like the Molebug video. But thank you for the super chat. I'm going to continuously go on here because I am running up on my time. I didn't want to spend more than 2 hours on this, live stream. So, you know, and again, I've been traveling, so I'm feeling a little bit, let's see did Kurt reply to any of the tweets? He gave me a smiley winky face. Well, anyway, let's keep on going with this propertarian stuff. Okay, so outside of that incredibly funny little 5 minutes on Ray's, I subscribed to the podcast just on the strength of that episode. I mean, come on, and I laughed harder than that than I laughed on on any PewDiePie video. But let's keep on going. Okay. So here are the deep problems with propertarianism, and anybody who's talking to propertarianism about propertarianism to somebody, even if they're not Kurt Doolittle, or they take his ideas seriously, and they're not talking about civil war, and they want me to take propertarianism seriously. The idea of talking about goods like the nation and culture and faith and intergenerationality as a property right, I think that's actually kind of a cool idea. I don't have any problem with it in the abstract. It's a language thing, and maybe there's something useful for that, and I'm excited about this. But between saying, okay, property in toto is now a thing that we're enforcing, and that we're now going to enforce legal protections or legal liabilities for people. We're going to say it's okay. We're going to say that, oh, the government's going to take a case against you for false statements said in public or on media, or we're going to allow private citizens to seek redress for damages. There's huge problems with this. The first thing is, what's the criteria for publicly protected speech? So here's a very, very simple scenario. Okay, so Party A goes out to the public square in Canada, where I'm currently at, or in the United States, and let's just say they go to Pioneer Square in downtown Seattle, and they set up a soapbox, and they say a statement really loudly. It's their right to, right? Public speech has always been protected. Okay, Party B thinks that statement is wrong, and under proprietarian law invokes the government either through the institution of a lawsuit or through criminal suit to bring that person to court. Who has the burden of proof? Okay, because here's the thing. And does it matter what statement A is? What kind of statement is? If the person, because most statements are not provable. So if the burden of proof is on the person to prove what they said is demonstrable empirically or provable rationally, they'll fail that burden. And so will anybody who has any kind of controversial statement. They could say, 2 years ago it could be, I think that M-brain theory is true. Oh, could you prove M-brain theory is true? Well, no one can. The most brilliant physicists can't. It's a legitimate scientific theory. I think it's the reigning one right now for unification, the unified field theory. But you can't prove it. Okay, so I guess then you're a criminal, or we sue you till you're broke. Who knows? Maybe I think that's caused me damages. Of course, how do you prove that it caused you damages? Who knows, right? You can't prove damages. Oh, do you have to prove damages? No, because you can't prove damages on intangibles. You can't testimony to damages that come down the line from a false statement. That's impossible to assess. That brings me to the second point. How do you assess damages? My moderator is telling me to check my DMs, and I'm going to do that right now because maybe I could get Kurt Doolittle on here to answer these questions. Okay, everyone who's called me a boomer in the past, like, you are absolutely, okay, I'm checking. I got one from Trudel Tom, but he's not talking about, they're all talking about things they want me to do after this stream, guys. I thought you said that I was expecting something from Kurt or someone who wanted to defend propertarianism. I'm sorry, guys, if I'm not saying this, maybe we'll just do something later. But okay, I get, you guys are saying this too. I just don't see it. I see invitations to other things that are down the line. But again, we'll deal with that a little bit later. Okay. So, where was I? Okay, let's go back to the problems here. Okay, so everyone wants to legalize lying. Everyone wants to have property extend to intangibles, but this is the problem. Okay, you can't. Without property being tangible, it's impossible to assess future damages. So if I'm a judge, I don't know how to assess future damages on a false statement. B, Most statements are not provable, and most statements are not testimonial. Do you know how I know this? Kurt Doolittle, in that little 5-minute clip I posted to you, said many statements that are not only not testimonial, they're false. He quoted a theory about the origins of Jesus, whose only support in primary texts is the Talmud. He questioned numerous inaccuracies, apparent inaccuracies, about ancient texts, not the least of which is that there was a trial of Socrates apparently in the Iliad, which, to my knowledge, having read that document, there isn't. So, I know Kurt doesn't use only testimonial language. I know John Mark and any of the Propertarians don't use testimonial language when they're in public, when they're broadcasting. So the burden of proof better not be on him to prove those things, because he can't. So the burden of proof then is on the person who's bringing the suit, and that immediately means that 99% of all statements are going to be immediately left off the hook. And actually, that actually makes a little bit of sense. If the burden of proof is on the person bringing the suit against the falsehood, that the statement is and this is the thing too. If they're saying, okay, if the judge says, okay, in order to prove this false, you have to have a testimonially and empirically demonstrable means that this statement is not true, then that makes a little bit of sense. But this also opens up a different thing. Okay, so does that mean that it has to be, that the statement has to be demonstrated to be false from the person saying it, so that it has to be like perjury? So if I say, I think that the moon is made out of green cheese, and someone sues me for that, and I'm like, oh, I wasn't taught, I wasn't told the correct thing, that was just my opinion, but now I'm educated, but from my perspective, I just thought it was. Or, I thought I saw a ghost, and that's my testimony, I thought I saw it, but I'm just happened to be wrong. It was demonstrated that I'm wrong, I didn't see a ghost. Well, okay, does that mean I can still seek damages, even if the person is honestly in error? Under the court, no. Under our current understanding of perjury, no. But that means that we have a huge problem here, because people are trying, in Kurt's understanding, we could even take people to court for errors they made. So this is something that makes no sense. But maybe if you just said we're going to extend perjury law, like so that we actually say, okay, in order to be proved to be lying so that you can seek damages, you have to show that it's an actual deception. You know you're lying, you know the truth, you communicate a falsehood to deceive the other person and get them to buy something or spend money for something that isn't really there. And living inside the Propertarianism.com website, let's pretend like this is something that we're serious about. The hurdle here is how you assess damages on intangibles, which we have no method of doing currently because they're intangible. They're speculative, right? It'll be totally subjective. And then the second question is, how do you stop this from just being everyone suing each other all the time? Because usually there's an element of buyer beware-ism in the world, and we rely on this to make sure that our entire interaction with everybody in the marketplace, this isn't lawsuits and counter lawsuits. And usually how we handle this is that we loosen lawsuits against objects like corporations to make them more liable for false advertising, with the understanding that the corporate personhood shields the shareholders and also provides them with the resources to withstand lawsuits. And this has been the compromise, but of course this is unaddressed. And how does Kurt solve this? Well, he solves this by assuring us that somewhere within his 7,000 tweets and Facebook posts, there's some answer to this question. And also, buy my $100 6-month course, which is going to be ready in a year. Hopefully, if civil war doesn't happen or something, then it's there. Trust me. Just trust me. I don't know, man. I don't know. Show me the money. These are the simple questions for Propertarianism. How do you answer these? And here we get to the final thing. If there aren't answers to these questions, and it's overwhelmingly likely that there are not going to be good answers to these, or that these answers are just going to be it's just going to be Kurt's own spiritual presuppositions need to be embraced and enthroned. So that he has a fully objectivist philosophy. And if you assert all of his philosophical preconceptions, you can work out all these things, but that means that society has to endorse Kurt Doolittle's own assumptions and axiomatic approaches to the truth to get to this place. But if there's not a system that is intersubjectively verifiable, even in the axiomatic form, then all we're saying is that we have no consistency. And again, this is law, right? So we have to be able to express, like, can I go out and say Christ is risen in Pioneer Square in Seattle? Can I say that? Under propertarianism? You know, and let's say I have 80 IQ. Let's say that I'm not someone who's gone through higher education. Let's say that I'm not someone who ever could go through higher education. Like, you at least need to be able to tell me whether I can say Christ is written in the public square. I mean, I can't do a 6-month Propertarian. I have to do a 6-month course to know if I can speak in public. That's the current barrier to entry. I mean, at that point, I'm basically a second-class citizen. I literally am an underclass. So what the heck is going on here? That's if you can't communicate the law to people who have sub 100 IQ, it's not a legitimate law. Law has to be simple. And law you have to be able to understand at least a little bit how law would be to someone who's of 120 IQ. Because without at least a 120 IQ person being able to work through how it's applied, you're not going to be able to have enough judges in this country to be able to properly enforce all of this. So what at the end of the day, what I get is essentially that it's just going to be that it's the judge's own intersubjective judgment about what's going on in the circumstance. That's, at the end of the day, what's going on here. And at this point, all we have is, we're just going to nominate kings to solve all our problems. Hey, you know, I'm a fan of Mensch's Moldbug. I'm not beyond considering that maybe what we need is like Judge Dredd. Even Judge Dredd is not what we're talking about, right? Because Judge Dredd has like the code of laws. He may be judge, jury, and executioner, but he's not the legislator. But what Kurt Doolittle is proposing is literally the subjective preconceptions that would need to be done both to assess damages and also to judge who has the burden falls on the shoulder of judges, which means that they're functionally not only judge, jury, and executioner, but also legislator. But maybe, so it's not Judge Dredd, it's King Dredd. Maybe we do need King Dredd to come into our society and just go like, okay, I'm the warlord here. Whatever my social preconceptions are, that's just how it's going to be. That's how I'm judging damages to society. And maybe ultimately this is the only solution. But at this point, this is not the Enlightenment, gentlemen. This is just saying that the Enlightenment was a huge failure, that the subjectivity of authoritarian rulers is, at the end of the day, what we have to fall back on if we want any chance in defending intangible civilizational properties that are obviously a threat. Well, at least if you're on the right wing, you think that they're obviously under threat. And the Enlightenment's not the way to do this, because at the point where we're saying that judges are going to decide this and there's no methodology that can be reasonably understood by a person of 120 IQ who's willing to read a book, then we're saying that there is no intersubjectively verifiable law that can be executed on a large scale with the expansive judicial system that will need to enforce this kind of legal framework to enforce truth at all levels. So it's a failure. It's not predictable. It's not enforceable. Kurt Doolittle has, to my knowledge, not given any of the knowledge of actually how to discern these problems to any of the people who swear up and down they're ready to fight the Civil War. And we're left with really nothing. We're left with someone who talks constantly about winning a civil war by unifying the part of America who he scoffs at constantly. I don't know what to make of this ideology. Yeah, but again, that's pretty much the end of this. I guess I wanted to go a little bit, really, and this is what I kind of wanted to, and this is, again, taken from the ghost dancing talk that I put a lot more work into than this ad hoc stream, but this really gets me to what a right wing should be doing, because what Kurt Doolittle is trying to do in some sense isn't a bad idea. It wouldn't be a bad idea to have a right-wing college that taught reactionary ideas. In fact, that's what eventually we'll need to do. It's not going to be the completion of the Enlightenment. It is not going to be one person's brilliant high IQ ideas. It's going to be a place that is safe, that isn't, well, we're not talking about violence, where people are talking about literal ideas that are of a counter-progressive nature, people feel comfortable talking. And we're going to have these conversations, and it's going to have to be collectively owned and managed. The Mulbuggian anniversary is going to have to eventually be a reality at some level. And the whole propertarianism.org, or was it .com? I forget. That's not a bad idea in and of itself. Even propertarianism, using property language to discuss intangibles, isn't a bad idea. It's just the laurels that Kurt is trying to put on his head that are where the problem arise. And it's where all of these problems arise, in my opinion. So with that, I guess we'll check the tweets or super chats one more time. I'll cover the rest of the super chats, and we'll start winding down the stream if my boomer self can figure out how to get out of full screen mode for the third time. Yeah, well, everyone has their disadvantages. Okay. I am not saying, oh, hey, he's talking to someone else. Well, okay. Apparently Kurt doesn't want to talk, but these questions aren't going to go away. These questions aren't going to go away, and quoting the Talmud, own Christianity, isn't going to, and saying how you're the second coming of Voltaire, and you're going to complete the Enlightenment, is also, I think, really not going to. Really, it's not going to get you anywhere on the right, and also scoffing at the people who you want to fight for you. Just not starters. You're just going to get a lot of people arrested, a lot of people hurt, and a lot of people feeling like you ripped them off, which is three things the right really doesn't need. And, I don't think that Kurt Doolittle is a Fed, but I will say that if I were a Fed, I'd probably be doing something like Kurt Little's doing right now. Getting people to expose themselves. And these questions are just going to reassert themselves. And anyone who's a propertarian, this movement grows. I'll talk to them. And go for it. I'm willing to talk. But I'm going to ask these questions if you're a propertarian. How do you adjudicate this? And how do you expect to incorporate this into any kind of right-wing thought, given the kind of problems we know we've seen? I think most of the super chats are done. I'm kind of curious to see how many people are watching. Okay, it's still about the same amount. Okay, so I have, for $5, Rashid Abdul Salam again. There's a kernel of interest in propertarianism with monetizing statistics via blockchain or something. Crime goes down, people are paid dividends. Now, this is a good idea. Monetizing predictions on statistics with blockchain is a really good idea. Having futures markets for predictable statistics would be a brilliant idea. Now, that is something that is actually something we could implement this idea, or I don't know, maybe there's some kind of barrier that I haven't thought of. But this is something that we could implement. It's low risk, high reward. It creates the basis for an antiversity that we could actually build in a futures market to predictive research. That, well, okay, what is your prediction that this paper has replicable results? And and that creates the market. It's not exactly how many papers you produce, but it's how many predictable results you have that are trending in a futures market that would indicate your research cloud. That would be really interesting to see in a blockchain. But anyway, what's so funny is I'm doing the stream on propertarianism and Kurt Doolittle, and I see Argent Templar and Endeavor did 1 and 2, and it wasn't my intention to do this, and I know that the propertarians can be like, oh, it's a conspiracy against us. Why did we have the JF interview with no white guilt and Argent Templar and Endeavor and Distributist all doing anti-propertarian videos at once? I'll tell you why. The reason is John Mark. The reason is that somebody's trying to who has a bigger audience than I do, is creating videos that explain these ideas in abstract form. And once you get a big audience, people are going to start asking questions. And these questions, these very simple questions, like the legality of a religion that is a majority of your audience in Red America, these very simple questions about how you're actually going to implement this through a system that needs to be adjudicated by 120 IQ people and needs to be followed by 85 IQ people. These questions are going to reassert themselves again and again and again and again and again. And you can ignore me, and you can ignore No White Guilt, and you can refuse to go on streams with us. Simple questions, Kurt. Simple questions, John Mark. We're going to keep on asking them. And these questions don't have answers, because I don't think they have answers. They can have answers. At least not from what people have told me right now. So I think, being that this is 9 o'clock, and being that I wanted to keep this roughly within 200 hours, not 200, roughly within 2 hours, given the fact that I had a little bit of a boomer open, shall we say. Let's just open up to questions, super chat or not, if people want to ask me anything. I hope that this is my last Propertarian video. And once I get to 20,000 subscribers, don't worry, guys, we're going to do a separate live stream channel. I don't think that people should have to be subjected to my stupid, boring live stream. Some people like hearing me ramble, hearing me, I stutter a little bit. I say ums and uhs, and I have pauses while I collect my thoughts, and I have terrible OBS skills, I'm not going to lie. But I think we're going to separate this from the main content so that, people don't get spammed from this. And I'll feel more comfortable doing more frequent live streams if I know that they're going to a separate channel, and that it's not going to be something that people are subjected to ordinarily. So last 5 minutes, if there are any questions, any super chats, just I'll be reading the chat space right now. Again, thanks for Trudel Tom. I've been meaning to have Trudel Tom on an interview with Via Obscura to talk about the concepts like generative anthropology, his own thing. I should say that Trudel Tom did do a stream with the generative anthropology people and Kurt, and they did. I felt like it got way too personal. I think that it was obvious that the GA guys and Kurt had history together, and so like a lot of the stuff back and forth, it sort of foreshadowed the simpler objections. But I feel like the stream, if you were listening to it as a layperson, you'd be like, oh, well, I have to know the history of GA and Kurt Doolittle to understand this. I guess. It needed to come back to the very simple questions that Kurt can't answer. And they have nothing to do with anything having to do with generative anthropology and Anglo versus Germanic schools of thought in the 19th century. That's way too high level. It's a question of implementation and framing. Right. Okay. So Pragmatic Culture for $2 says, please do a part 2 of what you couldn't get to. What haven't I got to? I'll do a part 2 if a Propertarian wants to come on. This is the statement. There are questions that Propertarians haven't answered, can't answered. Kurt Doolittle doesn't seem to understand the ideas he's quoting from. He speaks in non-testimonially verifiable language frequently, which would be presumably illegal under his own legal system. And he's literally quotes the Talmud in his stream with Ray. And it can't answer its own questions about how it objectively assesses perspective damages on abstract concepts that need to be protected in court, and how it determines truth and who has the burdens of truth when it comes to statements that are questionable. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know what else to say. I can't put it in more simple language than that. And then there's also just legitimacy questions about what Kurt's doing with propertarianism.com and what his current affiliations are that I think need to be answered in a much clearer fashion. But okay. But thank you very much. If you have questions for me, just ask them now and I'll tell you. I feel like I'm done. I honestly feel that Kurt's done. I mean, I don't think I did it. I just think that the attention between and I'm not unique in this. Like everyone is. I mean, basically, Kurt Doolittle thrived because he had a really talented YouTuber, John Mark, make videos that are obviously done by people who had a sales background. You will know how to do this. What if I told you we could have parasite-free government? That's the language John Mark uses. It's a sales language, right? And he had a cool little techno song and good production values. But I think as soon as people actually paid attention critically and he wasn't getting puff interviews, this doesn't go anywhere, right? And his frequent assertions about civil war make him not only sort of like incapable of answering the simple questions, they make him a liability to have around as a crackpot, because it's a crackpot that could get people killed and jailed. So yeah, that's, I think he's done. I think he's done because people started paying attention. Not me. Everyone started paying attention simultaneously, starting with No White Guilt, and I'm no fan of that YouTuber either. But it just, everyone started paying attention, and I think he's done. And prove me wrong. Prove me that if this is science, then I'll have to eat my words, right? I'll see this brilliant equation you have so that a reasonably intelligent person could intersubjectively verify truth claims and how statements could be judged in court. I haven't seen it yet, and I'm not paying $100 for it, Kurt. Not to a website that has lorem ipsum all over it with fake text. Like people who fork over hundreds of dollars to websites that are filled up with filler text, they don't tend to hang on to their money for very long because they fall for scammers. And people who are successful CEOs usually don't have websites that go live with essentially false promises in them. At least none of the ones in the industries that I have seen. I could be wrong. Maybe he works in an industry where this is like the standard. I doubt it though. So Skydancer. Oh, I shouldn't. Sorry, I usually don't read out the names of the non-super chats. But there's a question from the chat. Are you going to go on a stream with Arini? Yeah, I should do that at some point. I don't know much about Arini, other than people compare my voice to him all the time. When will you do a video on distributism and your position on economics? That's on my list. It's going to disappoint a lot of people. There's no theory behind distributism that's worth a damn. There are a lot of really great examples of people who've done wonderful things with the concepts of distributism and the concepts of Catholic social justice, but they're one-offs. They're like, what if we just empowered people in their local communities? That's basically it. What if we gave people power in their local communities to own their own tools? It's not sexy. It's not a methodology for understanding all of history. It didn't solve some problem. It didn't finish the Enlightenment. It's just rerum novarum with some examples. But I will make a video on it. But it's not going to. It's going to disappoint people. It's not going to be like a tool. It's going to be, hey, this worked here. What if we started following common sense in the future with a little bit more, with a little bit more attention to what Catholics call social justice? But anyway, given that I see that the questions are more or less done, I think I'm going to stop the stream here and wish everyone a good night. At any rate, it's been wonderful having you all on, my boomer moments notwithstanding. So have a wonderful rest of the week, and I hope to see you on future streams and when I get around to making a new video. I'm coming up on 20K. When I do, I'm definitely going to have these streams on another alternative channel, but I'll be announcing that well ahead of that. So have a wonderful night, a wonderful President's Day. Cheers and blessings all around.